one thing I like to do um, is just to see where everybody's personal practices are, because I think that gets lost a little. Because one of my recommendations, especially while you're in the course, I mean, probably forever, right, is to have a very organized approach to your personal practice that kind of moves you through the koshas and the different practices you teach. And it is extremely easy not to do that. And what you might find, though, if you don't, is that you wake up one day and you are prescribing practices that you don't understand. And, the basic of instructions of any practice are simple, but you forget, say, and this might seem obvious, but you forget the difference between like a kapha balancing practice and a vata, not what you're supposed to do, but what that actually feels like. And so one of the sort of jobs of a yoga therapist is to keep their facility with practices, even if it's not part of your personal evolution. And that is kind of weird because at least personally, I always feel kind of strapped for time in my own personal practice, like things I want to be doing. And like most humans, I'm not doing all the things I want to be doing, right? So that's a crunch. But I really try to step back probably every 3 months, like every season, say, and say, okay, what are the practices that I've like let go? So you might think of that for yourself, and you might like sort of take an inventory without feeling like you're a person who doesn't do enough, because that's the thing that comes up, right? But it is good to take personal inventory and just say, well, maybe every once in a while I should do this. And that's why you have to be organized, because to do a practice every once in a while is actually really hard to do. Because if you don't plan it, you just won't do it. So I'm sure you all have aspects, of practice that you do regularly, maybe even daily, or a few times a week or something. And then what I do is I do that step back and I actually schedule in. And for me, it applies 2 places a lot. Like, well, actually 3. Asana, like types of asana that don't suit my body as much, because that's a weird thing to motivate to do, right? But to do a half an hour practice, every 4 weeks to like remember what that's like. And then the second one would be pranayamas that I don't do, that maybe even aren't good for me, but there's ways to counter that, to keep facility with them. And sometimes you'll find that changes on you over time. And then the third, which is the most obvious one, is meditation techniques. Because usually you have one sort of meditational path that you're working on. But it's actually really, really good. And I think, and many would disagree with this, so you are welcome to disagree with this, but I think that meditation cross-training is a really good idea. So doing other forms of meditation and getting some facility on that makes you better at your primary one. It's just something to think about. But I've seen that many times. I've also seen many practitioners and traditions who've been doing the same practice, which is often recommended in traditions. When I get to work with them, I usually kind of shake them up a little bit. And they report the same thing. It's like they've gotten into such a deep groove. So you can imagine this with asana too, right? We are in such a deep vinyasa groove that, you haven't done 12 held poses in the last 4 years by accident or whatever, because you're always so busy, trying to get your vinyasa in because you're super busy and there's only so much time in the day and you're trying to exercise. You're trying to accomplish a certain thing, right? I guess one other thing I would add to all that is just that you might want to think about, if that's the kinds of things that are happening to you, doing something else to fulfill those needs occasionally. For instance, walking faster, running, or some sort of aerobic activity, so that when you get to your asana practice at some other time, you're not trying to get that in at the same time. So, or another example would be having a more active meditation practice and doing relaxation type things separately.